Computer. Okay. Your top of your head is on the thing. You might have to move it. Yeah. Sure. So what is a framework? So we've actually already talked about libraries, right? Where we we download a bunch of code that someone already created, and we can use it to help our programs, right? One we used to help us debug was IPython, and it gave us that embed, right? That's an outside library of code, and we bring it in. Just a bunch of classes and functions. A framework is a bunch of those libraries kind of brought together into something that is a little bit more opinionated. A library is like, here are my functions, use them any way I want. A framework will usually say, like, we're connecting this to this, so we're kind of giving you a pattern to help you flow data through your program. A framework is more structured, I guess. That's in my own words. I'll have to think about better.
One more quick question. I understand what you're saying. I've also heard this.
That makes one of us.
A lot.
What'd you say?
Opinionated.
Yes, yes.
A lot talking about this, and also don't understand that.
Sure. No, that's a great question. That'll become clearer the more we do stuff like this. Opinionated means like just that the framework. So hopefully you've started to learn that there are a bunch of different ways to solve a lot of these coding problems, and frameworks usually are opinionated. Not all of them are super opinionated. Are built in a way that say, like, this is the best way. We only want you to solve this problem in this way. That's what they mean by opinionated. So they've chosen one of 10 possible solutions and decided this is the best one. And that might be based on just whoever wrote it or.
And it would only work in that best way.
It will only work in that best way. Exactly. And usually, like, if you conform to that best way, it'll make your life a lot easier. But yeah, it'll only work in that way.
Okay.
Cool. Okay. Real quick, because we really need to dive into the code soon. I want to go back and how many people actually finished the HTTP server? A few. Not everybody. That's okay. That's totally fine. I just want to real quick talk about, because we're going to talk about the server for the rest of the week. We're going to talk about server side. So we did a little bit of front end, client side. Now we're going to do server side, right? So if you remember before, when we were drawing on the board and we had like a client. Oh my God, this is the computer. And they send the HTTP request, right? And we went over and we didn't have to memorize it, but the first line of it is usually something like get /time was one we wrote in the server. And then it's like HTTP, right? So this was the first line of our request. This will be the most important thing for us today. There's a bunch of other information that comes in, but we'll deal with it when we get there. And then it gets to the server. And I'm going to draw the server a little bit bigger here. And remember, this is just another computer running some code that basically decides what do I send back to the client. And in this case, we're talking about web pages, right? We're going to talk about full web pages, so HTML, CSS, JavaScript, any information. And so what happens, there's a couple of layers that happen in here that we're going to talk about today. The first thing that happens is the server decides where to go. Then it decides, then it builds up the web page, and then it sends it back. Those are the three things basically it does. What do I do? What do I need to do? How do I build the page? Then I send it back. That's it, right? So that looks like, and I want to draw it over on the side. So this is a bad idea. So if this request came in, this is my route, right? And by route, it's just like, where do I go or what do I want? This is like, this determines what action am I asking the server to perform. So in this case, it's, I want you to perform whatever you consider the time action, right? Which was delivering me the current time. So this comes in and it's like www.mysite.com/time. And when it gets over here to the server, it gets to something called the router. And the router has every single action that your server can perform. The router knows about it, right? So the router has kind of this like list, this directory. And in it, it has /time. And it might have like / what were the other ones we did? Fax, which would just like deliver some facts /fact/new. What is that?
That is my cell phone, but
That's all right, no worries.
also my ringtone should be changed.
So the router has a directory of all of the things that the actions that my program can do, right? So when this request comes in, the router looks through its directory, and it says, "Oh, okay, time. I know what that is, right?" And this is the layer 2. Like if we had done /money or something, and the router looked, "Oh, I don't have /money." That's when it sends the 404 back, right? Not found. So the router's our first thing. It looks through, it finds /time. It goes, "Great, I know /time. Let me send you there." Sends you over to /time. /time. The router then sends you to something called the controller /view. These are so every other framework calls it the controller, but Django calls it the view. So I want to give you both of these words because they're important. Sends you over to the view. The view says, "Oh, I know what /time is." It might have a method, def time. And this method, def time, builds the response for us. So it might say, like, it'll do like time dot now, right? To like get the time. It'll figure the time out, right? Then it'll also fetch the HTML. And the HTML we call a template. This will all make sense, hopefully more when we go through it. So a template is my HTML, and it's like an H1. Hello. And then maybe in a p tag, we just put like time.
The view and controller pages, files, those are .py's, right? I mean, for our
Yes.
projects. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's great. So this is .py,
And then the other
.py, and this is HTML. Good question.
That I mean, obviously it's just very like up down, but like you passed in the R parameter for that.
Yes.
Is it at the route?
It's the request. I just didn't want to write it out. Yeah, we'll see it. That's a great question. So usually this whole thing, remember how huge this was getting? It gets turned into an object for us. And we have it in Django. So in the server, we were asking you to parse it out yourself, which was a pain, right? You don't have to do that anymore. Django will do that. And it'll just give you an object called request. And we can ask it a bunch of questions about what was requested.
Do we have a template for app, or is
For-
it a template for the whole?
So we'll have both kind of. So we'll talk about that. You'll have one template that's kind of like, so you know how like your nav bar and your footer will like never change if you go to Amazon? So you'll have one called like your base template, and then you'll have different templates for each, depending on what you want to do, that will kind of like fit inside of that, right? We'll see how to do that. But by and large, you'll have different HTML. For now, let's just say you'll have different HTML for each route, because each route will probably need different HTML. So the controller does a bunch of stuff, right? It reaches out, it might get the time. If I was actually asking for like computers, like laptops from Amazon, it would hit the database. So remember when we were querying the database all last week? It would do something like computers equals, and then what was it? Just say comp.objects.all. It would grab all those, save it to a variable, and then it would pass that info to the template so that the template could read it. And then once all this is done, it forms a response, and that gets sent all the way back to the client. Okay? This is the very, very, very basics of it. These three things are what I want to focus on, even though we're going to have to do so much more because Django's complicated. So we're going to have a lot of other little things that we're going to talk about today. These three things, your router, your routes, your controller, your template. Your routes, your controller, your template. I'm going to try to repeat that over and over again because that is the big pattern that we need to learn. The quicker we learn that, the easier the little nuances will become. Well, I'm going to try to leave this over here, but I'm going to have to get rid of this so I can put the projector up.
So is the router stuff in the URL file?
Yes, exactly. The URL file is, we're going to call that our route. Yeah, that's our route. the URL file. So this will be our URL file. In fact, let me put those in here for us too. So URL.py, this will be views.py, and this will be, anything.html will depend. Cool. All right. Okay, so it's going to be a minute before we get there because Django takes a little bit to set up, but let's get there. Okay.
Ask about the
You can ask about, yes.
so the request variable is when you look at the document, it doesn't seem like request is defined anywhere. It's just there. So does Django know? So if you use R instead of requests as a parameter,
It'll be fine. Yeah, that will work.
it still works.
Yeah, it should. It should. Well, remind me when we get there. We'll try to experiment with that a little bit. What is this in the way? Yep. All right, this doesn't need to be on anymore anyway. Okay. So we're going to start a new Django project from scratch. We haven't done this yet, I don't think. So I'm going to make a folder just for our project. A CD into it, and let's just go right to VS Code here. Okay. I'm going to be I'll be jumping around, but I am going to go through with the first thing you're going to end up doing today. So don't worry, all this is written down. I might jump around a little bit, but you're going to end up doing exactly what I'm doing today. So, okay. And I'm going to need a little bit of help. So the first thing I'm going to do is make a virtual environment. And activate it. Cool. We're all used to that, I think, at this point. Then, now that I'm in my virtual environment, I'm going to download Django. So I just do pip install Django. I'll take a second. Cool. This is always here. I'm not really sure. I looked it up, and the answer I found was, yeah, that's always there. I was like, all right, fine. So we're going to upgrade pip real quick because it's asking us to. And it's pretty quick. Okay, cool. So now I have Django installed, but I don't have an app yet, right? So far, we've been downloading kind of already pre-made apps. So once I install Django, I have access to a bunch of commands that it gives me. And the command to start a new project is Django-admin start project, and we're going to call it my project. Whoops. Cool. So did you see it popped up over here? So we run this command, and I can ls too, and it created a folder called my project. So let's go over and see what's in my project. So if we remember from before, my project is my project folder. And then inside of it, I have another folder with a bunch of files that relate to the whole project as a whole, right? We have this init folder, which just tells Python that this is supposed to be treated like a module. We have the settings folder, which we were in a little bit last week, right? I think specifically we talked about the database. So this is where I can set up my database. There's a bunch of other settings and stuff in here that I can put in here and I can mess with. Then we have URLs. Let's get rid of this. Then we have URLs. This is what we were talking about before, the router, right? Where I define my routes. This is places people can go. Right now, Django defines one for me automatically, admin. I don't think this will work right away. We'd have to do some other stuff to set it up, but it defines one for me. We'll come back to admin on Wednesday. We'll talk about what the admin stuff is. And then that's it. And then I have this manage.py, and I never have to do anything in manage.py, but you're probably used to doing Python manage.py migrate, right? Stuff like that. And all this is, if we remember from last week, Python manage py is just saying, hey, Django, do something for me. And I want, so that's it.
Really quick.
Yeah.
Okay, so like you said, we're used to doing Python manage.py migrate, but also you do Python manage py stuff or any tests. So
Yep.
Is there something you need to add to this file then when there isn't a test file created?
No, so yeah, that will work as long as you have tests defined.
Right, so once you create your own test file.
Yep.
Then where do you, I mean, it's obviously something here. I guess maybe.
Once when we write, when we write those tests,
Right.
like manage.py test is already built in here.
Oh, so you don't have to touch anything.
No. In fact, I wonder what it'll do. I think it'll just say no test found if we do it. Let's just try it. Can't find it. No, wait, I'm in the wrong place. So I have to cd into my project. Yeah, so it still ran. It just ran 0 tests in 0 seconds because it couldn't find any.
If we're in that file though, does it, I mean, like if you call your test, my project test.
I think we'll find out soon.
If we called it my project test,
It just needs to be called test.
yes, yeah.
Okay, that's
You have to. So that's an example of opinionated, right? Like, we demand that you call everything test, but if you do that, we'll do all this extra work for you, right? We'll go find the tests for you. Good questions. Okay, so I have an app, but I can't really do anything with it. I mean, I could, but the convention or just the way that Django prefers you do it is that you create what's called an app. So we saw this a little bit, right? So now that I have a project, and I didn't really have to do anything to set it up right now, I want to create an app. Let's see, did I go over all this? I went over that. Cool. So the code for that is Python manage.py start app. So before it was start project, now it's start app. And the app that we're going to build, this is based on Django's own tutorial, right? And the app we're going to build is like a polling app. Basically, we're going to have 2 models. We'll have a question, and we'll have a bunch of choices for that question, and people can just vote. And the questions can be anything. I think the one we'll do today is like, how are you today? And people can say like, fine, and they can vote on it. We can see results like that. So it'll be pretty simple. So we're going to make an app called polls. And so that added this new folder after I ran that. So now I have this new folder, and we've seen some of this before. Again, we have another init. We have an admin that we don't need to worry about right now. We have this apps folder that we don't need, or file that we don't need to worry about. We want to go to our models, right? Our models is where we do what? What are the models? It's the database. Like what? Say a little bit more about how it works. Or like how's it related to the database? Hank.
So I mean, it's going to create your different tables and everything for that specific app.
Yeah. So it acts as a blueprint for our tables. It also defines the objects we want to work with when we pull data from that database and turn it into objects. Cool. We'll jump back in there in a little bit.
Real quick. So your project would, real world, like project would be Amazon.com, and then like your app would be like, say, like my cart or something like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very good.
So in the polls, you created that migrations folder.
Yep.
I've had issues with mine. I don't know if you guys said this, but even when I do make migrations, I don't get migrations folders somehow. I don't know why.
When
it automatically makes it here.
Yeah, so it made it here, and if you do like, what is it, manage.py, make migrations. When you
should make that in that folder.
Exactly. Well, I'm just asking, when you do that, do you also add the app name after, like polls?
No.
So yeah, you're not the only person who's had issues. I've had issues with that too. The
That
only
works, but then I
right, yeah, but then I'm like, where do those files go? And I'm not really sure if somehow my virtual environment is keeping track of it. We need to research that. But if you add the app name after, that usually fixes it. But we're not going to do that quite yet. Then I have my tests, and then views. Okay, so views is what we talked about a little bit this morning. This is like this is the views job. The controller's job is to take everything I need from the database, everything I need from my templates, smash them all together, like put all the data in the template, and then return it. That's basically what it does. So we're gonna write like a really, really, really simple route here. Let's go back. So I'm gonna do, let's see, I need a couple of things here. First, I'm gonna say from go.http import HTTP response. Okay. Make sure we're doing this in the right order. All right. So Django. So here's what I want to do. I want someone to be able to come to my app, go to my app, which the root of my app when I'm working locally is localhost 8000, right? So I want them to be able to come to localhost 8000/polls and see hello with a ton of exclamation points. That's my only goal right now, right? So I have to do a couple things in order to hook all that up to tell Django like where to go at what point and then what to send back. So Django's a little weird because it separates URLs a little bit, and it makes it really flexible, but it adds a little bit of an extra step when we want to make URLs. So we have a URLs file in our project. We're also going to make a brand new URLs file. Whoops, where did it go? In our app. So I'm going to do that right now. And what I basically am going to do is hook these two URL files together. I'm going to tell the one at my project level that it should like funnel into the one at my app level. Hopefully this will make more sense when we set it up. So at my project level, it's going to get confusing because we have two URL files. So try to make it very clear which one we're in. We're at our project level URLs right now. When a request comes into Django, it goes here first. It goes to this project level first.
And it was already in there.
This one's already in here, yeah. And in fact, just so because we're not going to use it, I'm going to delete it so it's not confusing. We're going to do path polls / let's see, include polls.url. Cool. And then up here, okay, so what did I just do? Django keeps track of our URLs basically in an array, in a list, right? It has this big, we just define a list, and that's kind of that directory I was talking about, right? And then within that list, I can define all of the actions that I want to be able to respond to. What I'm saying right here is if the action when it comes in, if it starts out as /polls, so if it's localhost 8000/polls/ anything else, then I want it, instead of sending it to a specific action, I want to send it to my polls app, and I want it to start reading from the URLs file there, right? So we're just connecting these two files. So my request comes in, it's going to hit this file. This file is going to tell it to go down and hit this file, right? It's a kind of an extra step, but you can imagine if you had tons of apps, this really helps you start kind of like namespacing things and keeping things very like clear where they're going so that you don't have these like giant routes laid out, and you also don't have overlap in your routes, right? Cool, so now that I'm in this file, I'm gonna copy this because I don't remember it. Actually, no, let's write it out just this time. I need a couple of things. I'm gonna say from Django.urls, import path, which is what we had from before. Then I want to say from this directory, import, no, so I'm going to do this. From views, import, which view, what did I call that? Index. And then we're going to have our URL patterns, which is my list. Okay. So again, at my project level, I hit /polls. It routes it to the polls app. Once I'm in my polls app, I have another list of routes. This one, I'm going to do, so if you just go to /polls/nothing else, then this this route's going to run, right? Because I didn't put anything in my string here. So that just means to /polls/nothing else. So use.index. Oh, wait, no, sorry. Hold on, I'm going to do this the way it is in the thing so we don't confuse everybody. Use.index, comma, name equals index. Cool. All right, one last time. I go to /polls. It hits my project. My project says, cool, I know what to do with /polls. I route that to my polls app, specifically the URLs file. Once I get in there, there's nothing else after my polls. It says, cool, this is a match, so it always just looks for a match. As soon as it finds a match, what I'm doing here in path is I'm saying, if something matches this route, run this function. Don't worry about the name yet. Right now, if something matches this route, run this function. That's actually what's happening over here. If something matches this route, run this function. The include function is a function that you get from Django that tells it to go to the other app, right? So once I get here, run this function. Once I get here, run the views.index function, which is this function right here that I've defined. Cool? That function returns an HTTP response, hello. All right? Questions about what we set up so far?
So when it's in the projects URLs, and it pitches a match, it blocks what it matched off before it sends it to the app. It takes the polls that.
That's a good question. I'm not really sure how it parses it, but conceptually that is definitely the idea. Yeah. I don't want to say that's literally what it does, but yes, conceptually, like
That's the way it
it's
works.
yes, that's the way it works. It stops looking for polls. It just starts looking for everything after that. Exactly. So like later we're gonna do like polls.questions, and I would just put questions here, right? But that would be polls.questions. Okay. So hopefully we've set this up. Probably forgot some things. Go for it.
Never mind. Okay, guys.
You sure?
Yeah, it was a fill-in part.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so we bring that views function in, and now we can run it. So now I just need to run my server. Yes.
What is it from that?
This directory. So I'm at the same level as views. So it just means import from this directory, import everything in the views file. You could do it that way. Usually you want to do it. I mean, usually it's okay to do that way because you're going to use all those functions. You wouldn't have defined them if you didn't. But I can also see an argument for doing them one at a time. But for the sake of this, I'm just going to do it this way. As long as you get the function in here. Okay. Okay, so now I want to run my server. Python run server. We didn't apply our migrations, but we should be fine because we're not using any of that yet. So now you can see we have a server running on localhost 8000. So let me get a window over here. And we're going to go to localhost 8000. That's going to give us an error, right? Because what does our route really go to? Polls/polls. So we didn't really define it. This would be like our root. This is usually called your root route. But we didn't define that yet. We just defined one at polls. So if I go to /polls, we got our response, right? So we have successfully hooked this up. Any questions about this pattern? Because this is basically what we're just going to repeat for the rest of the morning. Go ahead.
Can I see the main project heroes?
Cool.
If you deleted polls at the beginning,
This one?
sorry, that part, and then you did the almost 8,000, but I guess, never mind. I'm
No, actually, I see what you're saying. That might.
No, I'm misunderstanding.
No, that might work. That might work. Yeah, that works. That was.
Yeah, I do understand.
No, you do understand. So we're going to /nothing, which routes me to polls, which also has /nothing, which will just then run this, right? So it's really just like matching the pattern. It's like looking for a pattern. It's almost certainly using regex at some level to do this. And then that just tells it how to get to the next step, right? And the next step is running a function that we define that is called, we're going to call our views, although you also might hear it called control. Cool. So we haven't even messed with templates yet. We don't need the templates. We've still completed the request response cycle, but the templates obviously are going to help us make more better, easier to read web pages. So we'll add those in a minute. I'm going to go, what did I change now so I don't screw myself up? Yeah. So we'll bring this back. Perfect. And I think we're good on this. So, okay.
Can I see the views real quick?
For sure.
So Django just automatically knows what the request is.
I'm glad you brought that up. Let's print it and see. Sorry, the answer to your question is yes. But let's actually take a look at this. So what happens is when Django finally gets to here where we ask it to, or probably actually in both these cases. So the request comes in, and Django or some middleware that Django has parses it out and puts it in a request object. And then it will pass it automatically to whatever function I put here. It'll pass it as a parameter automatically, which means every function I write in my views has to have this. If I remove this, and like you said, I can call it anything. We call it cool. We call it cool here. Doesn't matter what I call it when I define it. It's going to be the request object. So I just have to expect something, and I know it's the request object. We'll take a quick look at it. It might be indecipherable. I can't remember the last time I printed it out. But it is. Oh my God, what happened? I lost everything. Thank you. Okay, that was terrifying. Okay. It wasn't that scary. I was playing it for dramatic effect. Okay. I'm going to kill this. And nope, I didn't want to do that. I want to keep that running. Let's also do this. Okay. So let's hit this again. /polls. And if we come over here, so we didn't give her a ton of information. We can see the object right here. That's the request. See that? Yeah, what's up?
You should put dir
Yep.
request to show
And we can
that.
see all the functions that you can call on it.
So that whole
You
get,
see more of
Go ahead.
that whole request part, that get/polls, when we did the server, the HTTP server, and we had to like create that URI and all that stuff, it's automatically happening.
Yep.
Which is why we did it.
Yep, exactly. So all that parsing of it, yeah, is being done for you. What? Yep. Thank you, Django. Thank you. So this is what it looks like just when we print it out. We'll do dir in a second. But you can see it does give us a little bit of information. There's that get to /polls, just like we were talking about before. Are we all familiar with dir? I can't remember if we went over that or not. We do dir on an object. So it's dir, and then I put an object in there. You'll see it. It's going to give me a list of all of the functions and attributes that are attached to that. So I can get an idea of what functions I can call on it. So let's hit this one more time. Maybe that didn't work for some reason. Cool. And so now you can see, so cookies, files, get. We're going to use get and post in a little bit. But we can see all the different things that we have. Here's the whole request line right here. Yeah, I mean, we're not going to go through every one of these. But.
So everything in that list is stuff you can, like functions you can do to that object?
Yep.
Is that, okay.
Yeah, functions and attributes. So like,
Or attribute.
yep.
The
Yeah.
ones with underscores are like you can find like remember repper or actually str.
STR is going to be,
I don't know if
STR
they have
has
one.
to be
Yeah,
in
that's
there.
right, right. But yeah, and the ones without underscores are the properties of functions.
So you would write like request dot get assigned cookie or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
So eventually what we're going to do, so get requests are just retrieve information. And usually we just kind of like assume it's a get request. But when someone sends a post request, they're probably going to send us a bunch of data too that they maybe want us to save or update the database with. And so we'll get to this. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but we'll do request.post. Basically, we'll just say if request.post, and this will return true or false, right? Or it'll return truthy or falsy. And then if it's a post, we'll know, okay, then I'm going to get information out of the body. And I'm going to save it in the database. We'll get to that. Cool. Let me get this thing. Come back to where we are right now. So we haven't really even started building our app. All we've done is just set up one route that returns hello. And then you might also remember from the HTTP server, we were parsing the request. We were also building up we had to build a response, and the response had to be formatted correctly. Django's going to handle all that for us too, right? In this case, because I don't have a template or anything, I had to import this HTTP response that allows me to just send back a string. But we're going to ditch that in a minute when we get to the templates, and we'll send back better things. Cool. All right. I totally lost my place here, so just okay. We'll make our models. We'll talk about installed apps, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll come back. All right. Okay. So let's talk about what we actually want to build here. Ditch this. Ditch this. Ditch this. I'm going to go to my models. Oh, sorry. Keep jumping around. Real quick. We are not going to hook up Postgres this time, just to save some time. If you don't hook up Postgres, by default, it uses SQLite, which is just a file. So it's fine for toys and for small things that we're trying to build. So we're just going to keep SQLite, okay? Because we have too much to do. So just so you know, we are going to have a database, but we're not going to hook up Postgres for this one. Okay.
You go over base dir and the join.
Wait, what?
The OS path that join. I was confusing it.
Oh, this?
Yeah. I understand what it means now, but
So
find your.
you might have to help me around. So base directory, I'm assuming, is a variable that gives you the directory that you're inside of, and then this. Yeah. So basically, this name variable just needs the name of your database. Django will, if we keep it for SQLite, it'll make the SQLite thing for us. And OS is just like system, operating system functions. We had to import it, I think. Yeah.
You see base dir. Yeah.
Base directory.
Yeah, how we're doing with the CSV thing.
All this path, dir name. Basically, it's using a bunch of variables to figure out like where am I at and like push all these names together to get like relative paths to things or like base names of things off of other things, right? We don't really need to know how it's set up at this point. We just need to know it's doing a bunch of work for us to help us name stuff and I'll help Django keep track of where things are relative to other things.
Is there a way to see what it names that database? I mean, sorry.
This, yeah, we could print database.name, I think, or default.name to do that. I'm pretty sure.
Not in the.
I don't know actually. Maybe when we import everything, which we'll do later, we can give it a try. But we're not even there yet. We don't even actually have the ability to use that shell yet. So I have to show you guys how to set that up because that's not built in. Okay. What the hell was I doing? I don't remember. Yeah. Models. Let's do those models first. Okay, so we are going to build just questions, like questions and voting. Questions and voting. I'm not even going to make you watch me type these out. I'm just going to copy them. Because we did this all last week. So same thing as before. I have one class, one model called questions. It inherits from models.models. It has two columns. One is the text for the question. The other is the publish date. And that's it. Then we have the choices. A choice belongs to a question. So I have a foreign key here. And then it has text. And then it has a number of votes. How many times did someone vote for that actual choice? That's it. Questions about the models or how this looks database-wise?
Related.
Choices. Oh, you don't understand related name?
Yes.
Okay, great. Related name is saying, so it's, I'm trying to get better at describing this. So choice belongs to a question, right? What the related name is saying is, on the question itself, what should I call the choice? So if I have an object, a question object, I make a question object that represents a question row, and I want to access all of the choices that belong to it, how should I do that? All related name is giving me is like a name to do that. So now I can do dot choices. If I did dot, I don't know why cool is just my word today. If I did dot cool, then dot cool would give me all the choices for the question.
So questions.cool dot all would give you all of the cool,
All of the choices.
all of the
Yeah. But we want to be specific, so we do
so now it will be all of the
choices.
From plural.
So
Got it.
it's always, it always relates to this, not the table you're on, but like the table you're referencing. Just takes a minute to, yeah. Cool. Okay, so we have these. What's my next move now that I have my models, if we were just going through it like we did last week? I define my models. What do I do next? Make my migration. So let's do... Cool. It blew up. It said no installed app with label polls. So this leads me to my next point. Every time we, so I have my main project and I have my settings file. My settings file is keeping track of all the apps that are related to my main project. So even though I told Django to generate the code for me, it didn't automatically hook it in to my installed apps, right? And the reason we were able to get around the URLs thing is because we were just telling it what file to go to, right? We weren't really doing anything else. We were just saying, hey, find this other file that happens to exist and go there, right? But here, when we want to do anything else, when we're interacting with the database or any other stuff where we have maybe apps interacting with each other, we have to add it here to installed apps, and we can just put the name of it. And you can see installed apps is a constant. That's a variable that isn't supposed to change once the app gets started, and it's just an array with the names of the different apps. These are all things Django needs to run. We don't need to worry about them right now. And then any other apps we want to add here. Cool. Oh, I wanted it outside. Thank you. Cool.
And actually, I have a quick question. This is me, but the comma at the end, because it's the last thing in it, I noticed that a lot last week. Sometimes you need a comma, sometimes you don't, and I didn't super know what.
That's a really great question. As far as I know, you don't need it at all.
Okay.
But I feel like I see a lot of people just put it there because a common thing to happen is like later I'm going to come in, I'm going to add another thing, and I'll have forgotten to put the comma in. So I think it's like, it's actually kind of nice. It's like a courtesy to the next person writing this code, right? Hey, I'll help you out so you don't forget that comma. But yeah, I've seen it a lot, so I just do it. And you're right, you don't need it. But since you can get away with it, and there have been dozens of times where I have fought with this and been like, oh, I forgot that comma, I just put it there. Cool, so I'm going to add polls there. So now let's try this again. So now that Django should know about polls, we should be able to run our migrations. or make our migrations. So then that, just to really made our migration file. And then I'm pretty sure when then you can see this other file, DB SQLite 3. It made that for us. And so SQLite is, like I said, it's just a file, but it behaves like SQL. So you can still query it with like select all and blah, 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 blah. But there are a bunch of reasons why we wouldn't use it in production and why we won't use it going forward. But just for now, we're going to keep it there. All right, cool. So I made the migrations. What do I have to do next? Run them. So let's do migrate. That'll run all my migrations. Well, that is, this is the SQLite file. I was like, what happened? Okay. Okay. This,
So
let's
now
do
we
this.
should be able to go like, not SQL, but whatever SQLite and see our database.
Yeah,
What is the name?
I'm actually not 100% sure how to do that, but we can try real quick. What's up?
What is the name of the database?
This goes back to that name.
Yes.
Yeah,
What
I
Nick's
guess
got.
it's,
I have no idea.
I don't really know. I don't
Look
do
at
this
the
enough.
Chinese name for SQLite maybe.
What Nick said, because that's what saved in the site does.
Yeah.
Just SQLite?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, DB SQLite 3. Yeah. We can try. Ooh, I'm not really sure if this is even the right command. We're going to spend 30 seconds on this, and then we're going to move on. Because
Sorry.
no, it's a great question. I was actually thinking about it on the way here. I was like, I hope no one asked me if I can.
Ollie.
No. No, it's a good question. I knew that on the way here. I was like, oh, that's a good question. I hope no one asked it.
I think it's just SQL.
It might be. I'm sure this is easily Googleable. I don't know. We'll look it up later because we will interact with it in a second. Okay, so we have the database set up. Okay, so you remember last week we were interacting with we weren't actually interacting with the database directly. We were using Django to do it, the Django shell, right? So there is a Django. We can do Python manage.py shell, and that'll put us in a shell. The thing that sucks here is like, maybe I want to make a question, right? Question dot create, or no, what was it? It's objects. How do you just do a new one? Oh, just like this. Okay. And what does it need? It's question text is totally gonna blow up. And update. I wonder if I can just get away with doing this. Let's see. It's going to blow up anyway, so it doesn't matter. It's going to say name question is not defined. So you remember last week it was bringing all the stuff in for us? That is not a thing Django has by default, but it is an easy thing we can install real quick. And I would recommend you just do it for every project because it makes your life so much easier. Because in order to do this, we would have to say from Django.models import, and then I have to import everything one at a time. So let's get out of here and actually set this up. So there's a library. So we're working in our framework, which is a bunch of libraries. There's another library we can add to this framework to give us actually a bunch of other stuff. But the main thing we want right now is the shell plus. And it's called Django Extensions. So I install it like I install any other library. Pip install Django Extensions. And that'll install it. I'm in my virtual environment, so it'll connect it. It'll be in my virtual environment. Then once I install it, it's actually an app. It's a module I'm downloading. So I actually have to install it in Django as well, just like I installed the app that I created. So I have to go back to settings. Where the hell were they? There they are. And down right here, I'm going to do Django underscore. It's a little annoying. Extensions. Like that. And so now this should be installed. This should have all this code working. I did. Thank you. That would have not worked. Cool. Django extensions. And now I should be able to do Python manage.py shell plus, and it'll work. I would check out, just as this quick side note, the Django extension docs. There's a ton of extra functionality. It gives you a lot of helpful developer stuff. I'm blanking on any of it right now, but I know it's been helpful to me in the past. Cool, so now I'm in here. So now let's make some data so that we can build our app and actually return that data in templates, right? So,
I'm sorry.
No.
You ran Python manage.py shell extension.
Shell plus.
Oh, shell plus. Yes.
Yep. So we're gonna make some stuff. We'll make this after we make this data. I promise we can go on a break. Django. I know. I talked a big game about that earlier, but this time I'm serious. Time zone. We're gonna want some data so that we can populate our templates with it. So I'm gonna import time zone because I'm gonna need that. And then let's make some questions. So we'll do question. I'm gonna save it to a variable. We'll just do one question for now. So I'm gonna make a question, question text. What do we want our question to be? Do we have a question they want polls? When is break? Wait, is it this or this? It's break, right? I had it right. I second guess myself all the time. Do you ever like write on the board and you're like, this isn't a word? You're like, it says movie. All the time, man. All the time.
Just so you know, you're watching me. Questions text.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
When you're writing something in the
No,
shell,
I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
when you're writing
This isn't
something-
the correct source there.
when you're writing something in the shell like that, you use Django.util.
Hold on. Too many people are talking. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, when you are writing in the shell and you import something like from Django.util import time, when you do that, is that something you should keep note of, like that you might need to hit at the top of one of your models or something?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I guess.
I don't think so. I am only importing time zone because I need to put a date here when I make this new thing.
Right.
But I'm not going to be making objects like in my code as much. Actually, that's not true. I take that back. Yes, if I wanted to use it, I would have to import it up here. Like if I wanted to use it in a file. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I guess actually, sorry, let's move forward. I'll ask that question.
Okay, sorry. I think
We're
maybe I
writing
missed it.
together. No,
Okay.
I know what I mean, but I can't.
I think you would, because if you want like a default date, you're gonna have to import it in the file. So
Okay. I think he knows what I was trying to get at, but I'll figure it out.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to make a question. When is break? Cool. Let's check it. Question. Great. It's not saved in the database. You know what I don't like, though? I hate that it says object. I would really like to see what the question text is. We can actually fix that real quick. We can come up here. We can say def. Do you remember this all the way from schools? So yeah, this string method, it's built in, but we can override it. It takes in self, and we can say return question, self dot question text. I'm going to copy this line because we're going to have to redo all this. So now we have to exit because I need to bring in the new code. F. Now if I check question, cool, I get the actual text from it, which is just much easier to read. Okay, so I'm going to make this question. It's not saved in my database yet. How do I save it in the database? .save. Cool, now let's check question again. Oh, I guess that got rid of my ID. That's annoying. But anyway, should be saved. Okay, let's do...
Could you fix that just by in the string method, just putting the ID also?
Yep.
Okay.
We could do like, in fact, yeah, you can put
Whatever you
anything
want
there.
there.
Anything you want. Yep, anything you want. Yeah, and then that might be a good idea for later. Okay. Question.save. Let's actually make sure it's in there. We can do question, question.objects.all, and we get that question, so we know it's saved in the database. That's good. Okay, and then we have all the things that we would expect. Question dot, let's just do pub date. Is that date? And I should also be able to do question dot choices, right? Because we set that up with that related name. Oh, sorry, dot all. And I get, there are no choices, but I do get this query set, so I know that that's at least hooked up correctly. Cool. So now let's add a couple of choices. Okay. I can do that by doing, I just want to make sure I was doing this right. I can do question.choices.create. This will automatically make a new choice and associate it with this question. So I don't have to do any extra work with that. So question.choices.create, and the question needs choice text. So, and what was the question? Is it break yet? So choice text equals, and so what was our question? What time is break? Never will be 1. And I think that's all we need for that. What's up? Oh, okay. We should be able to get rid of the other ones. Or no, yeah, there's a default for votes, so we should be okay. Cool. Let's do one more. Super never. And let's do one more, which is soon. Never now. Never now. Okay, we'll just double check to make sure all this works. Cool, and I get all my choices. This is great. I know we did this last week. This is a little bit of a review, but this whole process of setting up my models and then testing them in the shell or in any way is super important. I want you to get in the habit of doing it to make sure I set up everything I thought I set up the right way.
Do you have to save now? Is any of that stuff saved?
It should be saved if I do create. Create makes it and saves it automatically. So the create method will do both for you.
It's the default string method, the ID. Is that what?
It seems to be, right?
Okay, yeah.
It's also giving us this object thing, so I'm not
I
sure.
think it's good enough with under method on class choice.
The string thing? No, I see he's asking like, what does string do? Because it's still calling string. It's just, it's calling here it's calling the string that I defined on question, but on the choice I didn't define a string, but there is a string method or function. And it might be the ID, it might be the object and the ID, I'm not sure. But we do know it's a choice object. Okay, so we're done with this. We have all of our data in the database. So we can take we'll take a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and do a bunch more stuff.